Trout routes combine stream maps and river data to help you find fishing access faster. Be confident on the water with fishing access points, real-time stream gauges, and public access, now brought to you by Onyx Maps. Whether you're looking for blue lines, gold medal rivers, or something new in your backyard, Trout Routes has the data to get you on the water fast. Destination Angler podcast listeners can try 1 month of Trout Routes Pro for free by clicking on the link in the episode description. Do what I do and put more access in your hands and explore the water you love with Trout Routes today. This week on the Destination Angler. What's the fight like on a giant coaster?
Well, they're tough fish. They will make really powerful runs, which you don't normally think about brook trout doing. We've had fish jump, which you don't normally think brook trout doing. So they're a little bit supercharged, I think, because they're always on the move. They're always swimming, it seems like. So they're strong, powerful fish.
And that was Jerry Darkus talking about Lake Superior coasters. Hey, if you like the show, please give us a share, like, or follow wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures specially designed to your level of experience and budget, by High and Dry Fishing, where science and performance meet, and by Trout Routes. Be the first to know about new episodes when you sign up for my newsletter on the Destination Angler podcast website and get 3 months of Trout Routes free for first-time subscribers. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we are headed to Penns Creek with world champion angler Tess Wiegand. Then we cover Alaska versus Argentina with fly fishing artist Bob White and author Steve Ramirez. Be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on Big Pine Creek with Ethan Albright, head guide at Slate Run Tackle Shop there in Pennsylvania. Ethan gives us the lowdown on the tons and tons of creeks and rivers in the area, along with stories of black bears and rattlesnakes, stargazing and porcupines, and triple-digit days. You won't want to miss these shows. And today our destination is Canada's Lake Superior Marine Conservation Area for giant coaster brook trout. That's 3,800 square miles of crystal clear water and steep rocky drop-offs, hiding the biggest brook trout on the planet. Joining me is author, guide, and Great Lakes expert Jerry Darkus, who gives us a whirlwind tour of fly fishing the Great Lakes and a deep dive into where, when, and how to find these genetically supercharged brookies that'll yank your rod right out of your hands. Folks, we're talking brook trout pushing 5 to 8 pounds. Hey, and Jerry's been fishing the Great Lakes for 50 years, and this remote area specifically for 15. Today, he shares his strategies on sinking lines and tag teaming for big fish, plus top flies and the logistics of getting there. As a bonus, Jerry dishes out smallmouth hotspots, flats fishing for carp, and even lake trout and pike bulldogging in the shallows. And stick around for why Cleveland might just be a fly fishing hotspot, no joke, and what Jerry really thinks about shore lunches. Let's head to Canada with Jerry. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Destination Angler Podcast. And today we've got a really exciting show. I've got Jerry Darkus here with me. Jerry's from Cleveland, Ohio, and is an expert on the Great Lakes. Welcome to the show, Jerry.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Are you down there in your fly tying area, it looks like, maybe?
Yeah. This is the fly tying room. A lot of stuff happens down here.
Besides fly tying, you cooking up all kinds of plans down there, probably, huh?
It's mostly fly tying oriented, but yeah, always thinking about trying something different, trying something new.
There you go. I'm jealous you got your own fly tying room. I share a room with, for fly tying anyway.
Yeah. Well, I got about 50 plus years of stuff accumulated here, so it's
Yeah.
I don't want to show you all of it. It'd be a little embarrassing, probably,
I
if
got
you
you
saw
pull that cape
everything.
out. I still have capes I got when I was in 8th grade,
Yeah,
really horrible, like, might use them for a wet fly, maybe not.
right.
Anyway, so today, folks, we're gonna talk about an area I bet you've never heard of, and you should. It's called the Lake Superior Marine Conservation Area, and it's full of giant coaster brook trout. How does that sound? This is the largest protected freshwater area in the world, covering 3,800 square miles. And I tell you what, Jerry tells me it's one of the greatest conservation success stories we have. And it sounds like it's some pretty darn good fly fishing. So, anyway, Jerry's from Cleveland, Ohio, 5 decades of fly fishing experience in fresh and salt. He's taught fly fishing for over 30 years as a Federation of Fly Fishers International Certified Casting Instructor. He's a well known author and educator, 4 books to his credit, and numerous magazine articles. He's traveled all over the world to places like Chile, Cuba, Mexico, Alaska, Belize, Ontario, Labrador, and Newfoundland, and is really a resident expert on fly fishing the Great Lakes. He's been featured on radio and television shows, podcasts, and today he's featured on my podcast, Destination Angler. So we're going to explore the treasure trove of fly fishing that can be found in the Great Lakes and in specifically this Lake Superior Marine Conservation Area. So anyway, we're going to get into Lake Superior and coasters, but Jerry, first, I know you're a big proponent of the Great Lakes, and are people just missing the boat with the Great Lakes? I mean, I guess I just don't think of fly fishing, and other than stuff that's running up the rivers around the Great Lakes, I just don't think of fly fishing in the Great Lakes. But what am I missing?
Oh gosh, man, there's a lot of different scenarios. There's hundreds of river mouths and creek mouths and shallow protected bay areas and near shore reefs and rock piles, and it's almost limitless, the opportunities that are out there. And you know, admittedly, a lot of it requires some sort of a watercraft, but that could be, depending on where you're at and time of year, anything from a float tube or canoe or kayak, or to a larger, bigger boat that you can go a ways offshore with in that too. Yeah, but there are good shore areas too. So it's like anywhere else. You got to do a little bit of research. You got to find the type of stuff you're looking for. It's seasonal, like a lot of fisheries are, but wide range of fish available, warm water and cold water species, and very accessible, a lot of it. And a lot of it is just very, very underutilized. So,
And even right outside of Cleveland, huh?
yeah, even right outside of Cleveland. Yep.
I tell you what, Cleveland, it's got that reputation from way back in the 60s, but you growing up in Toledo, Ohio, I've been to Cleveland a lot, man. It's a great area. It really is. It's a
Yeah.
little cloudy, right? It's one of the cloudiest towns in America, but what do you think of Cleveland? Good town?
Yeah. I grew up here, stayed here. I think it's a fun place. You can travel around without too much trouble, as far as traffic and that. Cost of living is very, very reasonable. Got good sports teams, great
The
museums.
Browns.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple good sports teams. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
There's just a lot to do here, and there is really a lot of good fishing really close by.
Yeah.
And if you want to travel a few hours, you can get into a really wide range of different opportunities.
All right. So, what kind of fish are you chasing in the Great Lakes?
You mean like here in the Cleveland area,
I just
or
like if we're talking about the big area, the Great Lakes in general. So I can go after what's steelhead and salmon, trout. What else can I go after?
oh man, smallmouth, largemouth, pike, muskie, freshwater drum, carp, all kinds of panfish, lake trout, brown trout, rainbow trout, Atlantic salmon, Pacific salmon. So all kinds of stuff.
I hear there's some escapee goldfish that are swimming around in Great Lakes these days too. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, and there's probably a piranha or two out there too. So, I don't know.
A piranha, can they survive? Man, would not want to hook a piranha, I don't think. Anyway, when you're talking about rock piles and whatnot, like what kind of fish am I going after on a rock pile with a fly rod?
It kind of depends on where you're at. Most of the time, I'd say we're looking at, chasing smallmouth bass.
Okay.
on near shore, reefs, shallow areas like that with, drop offs, close drop offs to deep water. But again, freshwater drum can be into the mix there. In certain areas, certain places, carp will be in the mix. So it just depends on the location. Now, you mentioned the Lake Superior Marine, that conservation area up northwest corner of Lake Superior. There, a lot of the reef areas and that will be like lake trout and coastal brook trout.
Yeah.
So it varies on the location that you're at.
Okay. And so you can also get into some wading and some flats fishing situations, can't you?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's oh gosh, thinking about Lake, for example, Lake St. Clair, which is like a connector between Lake Erie and Lake Huron, has some big shallow areas. Lake Erie certainly has a lot. There's places in Lake Ontario that you can walk and wade fish, Lake Michigan, so there's extensive flats, all around the Great Lakes. You just gotta, again, it's one of those things you gotta look around a little bit, find the spots, make sure you're doing it the right time of year, and you really, depending on where you're at, a whole range of different species might be available to you.
What are you fishing for on the flats in freshwater?
Well, again, we're looking at possibly smallmouth bass,
Okay.
largemouth bass in some locations, and again, carp, probably maybe the primary one that most people go after. But we'll find drum up on the flats at times, and you might even run into the odd, muskie or something like that at times too. So
Really?
it's just hard to tell, but it'd be primarily smallmouth and carp for the most part, and we're looking at, the southern parts of the lakes, for that type of stuff more than, the northern part of the lakes.
Now, you haven't mentioned walleye. Why is that?
Walleye would not be a primary target on a fly. They can be caught,
Yeah.
and especially when they're up in the shallows, we've kind of come up with a few techniques that make them a little bit more of a consistent catch, but a lot of them are offshore populations, migratory fish that tend to follow bait, and they might be out suspended in 40, 50 feet of water or something like
Kind of
that. So
tough on a fly rod.
makes them a little bit tougher. But if you do find them inshore and hanging around, rocky areas, drop offs, and that, you can definitely catch it.
Okay. And you can get lake trout on a fly rod?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Is that a seasonal thing?
sure.
When do you go after lake trout?
Usually right after ice out in the spring,
Okay.
and again, depending on the location, again in the fall, like October, November into December. It kind of depends on where you're at and the way the seasons fall. But they move into shallow areas in the fall to spawn, but then they'll follow bait fish and move in, shallow to feed on bait fish in the springtime.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
you're picking the time frame for Lakers.
What's your personal best on a lake trout? They get big.
Probably somewhere around 18 pounds or so.
18-pound lake trout. What's the fight
Hmm.
like in the shallows with a 18-pound lake trout?
They're tough, man. They'll make a long run on you and just bulldog strong and hard to get up off the bottom. And they get a bad rap, I think, from a lot of people because most have been caught in deep water on either like a
Right.
lead core line or, coming up from 100+ feet
Right.
off of a downrigger setup. So, and being drugged behind the boat. So that kind of kills a lot of the fun of them. But on a fly rod, you know, getting them up shallow and that they're great fish. I love them.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've got pike and muskie too, huh? And they'll come into
Sure.
the shallows, right? They like weed beds and
Yep. Yep. And the prime time to target pike generally is at ice out also, because
okay.
they'll concentrate in shallow, dark bottom areas to spawn, and you can get some really really big ones that time of year.
Yeah. And muskie kind of mixed in with the pike typically, same areas?
Now, similar areas, but there's not. They don't overlap real good in most places. Lake St. Clair is probably the one place where you can find, concentrations of pike and muskie, but you don't typically find both in significant numbers in the same locations.
Why is that?
I think it has to do with, the spawning times are a little bit different,
Yeah.
and it might be one. I'm trying to think if probably the pike spawn a little bit earlier, and they might get big enough to eat the muskies when they hatch, and
Okay.
yeah, so it's just not a perfect relationship between the two.
They don't like each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So if you were to just tick off maybe a couple of areas, specific areas in the Great Lakes, without giving away your very favorite honey holes, I mean, can you give us a few spots that people might think about for different types of fish?
Yeah. Give me a list to go off of here.
All right. So where would your favorite place for smallmouth?
Smallmouth would probably be number one, probably Lake St. Clair, as
Like St.
far as,
Clair.
numbers of fish and possible big size fish. But there's Chequamegon Bay, Lake Superior on the Wisconsin side is great. The Door Peninsula on Lake Michigan is another great smallmouth area. Eastern end of Lake Ontario, eastern end of Lake Erie, actually all of Lake Erie. It's great
Yeah.
smallmouth fishing.
Lake Erie's real shallow, right? I mean, it averages like 20 or 30 feet.
Yeah, it's shallowest of all the Great Lakes. Yeah, so there is extensive shallow areas, and Presque Isle Bay near Erie's real popular area. Very wadeable, great place for kayak fishing. So there's a number of different locations like that around the lakes, and there's probably locations like that we haven't even found yet.
Probably.
Because there's just that not that many people doing it in a lot of places.
Yeah. What about carp fishing? Favorite places to go?
Carp fishing, boy, I would look at maybe one of my favorite spots is Grand Traverse Bay up by Traverse City, Lake Michigan. Hard white sand flats, and once you get into the lake, you can wade just about as far as you want to along the shorelines and that.
Really?
Yeah. And, again, we're looking at a time frame late May through the month of June net, but you can see the fish a half mile away on the hard sand flats and that. And it's just a matter of getting them to eat the fly then.
Yeah.
So that's great area. Also good for smallmouth, that whole region there. Boy, you run a little bit deeper water in that. It's lake trout. A lot going on up in that area
Huh.
for sure.
Kind of thought you'd say Beaver Island.
Beaver Island's a great carp spot, but again, it's hard to get to.
Yeah.
You got to get there by boat or by plane or something like that. And, so it's not just something you can drive up to and start to fish.
That's in the middle of kind of northern Lake Michigan, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Like there's ferry boats that can take you over there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a cool place, but again, it's a little more degree of difficulty to do it. So
Okay.
well, I'm just trying to think of a couple other good. Lake St. Clair's got good carp fishing. Even in Lake Huron, any of the shallow, rocky areas and that, especially along the east shoreline of Michigan, you'll run into carp too. So there's multiple areas that can be good. Even the Door County in Wisconsin, that area there can be good too. So there's a lot of different areas around the lakes that you can actually walk and wade fish. You can drive to a lot of these places.
Yeah. Right. Have you fished up by Tobermory in Huron?
I have not. No,
Okay.
that's one area I haven't really been out up on that part of Lake Huron or that whole Georgian Bay area.
Okay.
And again, that's a huge area. They call it, 30,000 islands because
Right.
it's so much there. And it's a lot of it is very rarely even fished. So,
I have a buddy whose family owns one of those islands. I guess it's not that hard to do. You can buy an island in that one of those 30,000 islands can be yours.
yeah, there you go.
And they have to take a boat to get their groceries and
Yeah.
they are on this island, for most of the summer and they fish all the time. I'm not sure exactly what they're catching. Anyway, and some of these parts of the Great Lakes are super remote too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, what you just talked about, where you got to drive, a boat in to get your groceries and go back to the go back then to where you're staying. Yeah, so there is a lot of pretty much wilderness area around the Great Lakes at this point, or just look at like Isle Royale and Lake Superior on the U.S.
Yeah.
side. I mean, that's you got to access that by boat.
Right.
Yeah, and there's really no other way to get there. You might be able to get there by float plane. I'm not sure about that. And you can fish islands on or lakes on Isle Royale too.
There's lakes on Isle Royale, and there's
Oh
moose on
yeah,
Isle Royale too.
moose, yeah, and wolves and all that. And
Oh,
yeah,
is there?
so
Huh.
yeah, so a lot of really wilderness places still left that are, again, I think you mentioned at the beginning, just not even very well known about.
Not even known about. Here's Brian Oakland, founder of Got Fishing.
There's really no reason for an angler not to use Got Fishing when everything we do for you is free. We have the best trips around the world. We only work with the best outfitters, and we're definitely going to get you the best deal and the best dates guaranteed. That's why we have clients come back time and time again. We have Don with us on this trip. This has been his 6th fishing adventure with Got Fishing, and I think if you asked him, it is because of all the little things. We don't tell people, we ask questions. What is it that you're looking for? What would be most important to you? Who's coming with you? What's your experience level? And really at the end of the day, what is the most important aspect of this experience that you're looking to take home? And then from there, we just marry them up with some of the best lodges, let them take a look at 2 or 3 different options and pick what's going to be best for them.
Well, there you have it, folks. A pretty good case for choosing Got Fishing for your next big adventure. So what are you waiting for? Give Brian a shout or visit gotfishing.com. I first came across liquid fly dip floatants years ago when guides were mixing their own brews with lighter fluid and mucilin wax. It worked, but you had to wonder, what's it doing to the river? Recently, I tried some store-bought brands. One left a white crust on my fly, another left an oil slick in the water. Not good. No way I'm using that stuff. Then I found High and Dry, and let me tell you, this stuff is a game changer. It's built by scientists who actually fly fish, and it shows. Your fly floats like a cork, looks natural, and it's 100% environmentally friendly. No film, no gunk, no gilt. And their floatants work in any condition, from blazing heat to freezing cold. In my opinion, these are the best performing, most innovative floatants on the market today, hands down. So check out the full lineup of liquid floatants, line dressings, and cider waxes at highanddryfishingproducts.com. Your fly and the fish will thank you. All right, so let's talk about coasters. What's a coaster and what gets you excited about them?
Well, a coaster is a big lake dwelling brook trout. And I love brook trout because really brook trout were the first fish I caught on a fly. First fish I caught on a dry fly, in northern Pennsylvania, where my dad's family had a hunting camp that we'd go to in kind of the spring and in summer to fish the mountain streams there. So I just kind of fell in love with brook trout. And when I was working on my first book, this whole thing about coasters was very intriguing because I knew that the world record brook trout, record that's been standing since 1915, was caught in the Nipigon River, which is primary tributary to Lake Superior.
Yeah.
And that just always interested me very, very much. And when I was a kid, I was like, one day I'm going to go up there and
Yeah.
see that area. And it took a while to get there, but I finally did, and just kind of fell in love with that whole area. And the thing about the fish themselves is that is genetically the largest strain of brook trout that there is. And that strain of fish was pretty much decimated by the end of the 20th century. They were almost fully wiped out by a combination of things: overfishing, habitat destruction. The Nipigon River was probably the primary spawning area for a lot of those fish. And, there was a series of dams put on it, which, really cut out a lot of the prime spawning areas. And then they would do a water drawdown in the fall. So any fish that did spawn, the reds would be exposed, the eggs would die.
Oh,
And of
geez.
course, everybody loves to eat brook trout, and the fish just didn't get a chance to recover. they were in really, really bad shape, late 1900s. And there was a biologist in Ontario that in the early 2000s, did a lot of research on these fish. And over the years, stockings really didn't do anything to help the populations at all, either on the US side or on the Ontario side. And this fella, I can't pull up his name right at the moment, but he got the Ministry of Natural Resources to enact special regulations, which was a pretty restrictive season that started really the beginning of May, end of April, and ended for the most part on Labor Day. Most of the fish they found spawned in late September and October. So it protected the spawning population. But the other thing they did is they put a pretty substantial size limit on it. Initially, I think it was 20 inches, and it went up to 22 inches, is where it's at now. And it's a one fish per day thing.
Minimum of 22.
Yep, one fish per day. So it's essentially it's a catch and release fishery.
Yeah.
And it took a while for, the fishing community to embrace it, because it was so restrictive. But, the fact that you could go out for a weekend in early 2000s, late 1900s, and maybe catch a couple brook trout that were 10 or 12 inches long, and that was it.
Yeah.
People finally understood that there was a problem, and they actually let those regulations take hold a little bit. And I've been going up there for close to 15 years now, and in that time span, just the size distribution of fish, the numbers that we encounter, it's just been a very significant increase. There's difference in what it was from the beginning to what it is now. So, oddly enough, if you protect them and give them a chance to live, they can actually make it happen on their own. So, so that's a
Resilient.
fishery success story that hopefully will continue.
So it took them 100 years to figure out we need to put some regs in place.
Pretty much, yeah. If you look at the accounts from the late 1800s, of course, we could look at the Michigan grayling and other
Yeah.
things like that too. So,
Sure.
but the accounts out of Lake Superior, both on the U.S. and the Canadian side in the late 1800s and stuff, the numbers of fish they were catching was pretty incredible,
Yeah.
and the average size of the fish. So it was just something they had to get a chance to recover.
These regs are on the Canadian side?
Well, those particular regulations on the Canadian side, the U.S. side, they vary a little bit depending state to state, and it's a little bit more liberal. But even I think that the U.S. now has finally realized, hey, we gotta do something a little different than what we've been doing to really give these fish a chance to come back.
Okay.
In Isle Royale is that population is slowly increasing, and some of that might be kind of, stuff coming down from Ontario also is going down into that area, but that local population is getting a chance, and it's just hard to get to. So that's another part of the equation is, if it's super easy to get to, it just makes it harder. So just being a little bit more difficult, there's not as much pressure on the fish, and it definitely is helping them out.
So can you find coasters now throughout the Great Lakes, or where are they?
Well, historically, they were really only found in northern Lake Huron and Lake Superior, that those
Okay.
particular fish. So they're not widespread throughout the Great Lakes, no. But they were all through Lake Superior, and that's where that's really where they were primarily found.
Okay. And today, can you still find them throughout Lake Superior?
Yeah, the population has really expanded on the North Shore. By the North Shore, I'm meaning the North Shore of the lake in Ontario, not the North Shore of Minnesota. We
Okay.
kind of have two different
Lake Superior. Yeah.
of things there. So, but the Ontario shoreline, you can really encounter them anywhere now from down around Sault Ste. Marie all the way around to Thunder Bay.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So they spread out quite a bit. I've caught them about an hour and a half out of Thunder or out of Sault Ste. Marie, like around the Sand River, that area. So most of the river mouths going in from the north shore of the lake, you do have a chance of running into them now.
Huh, no kidding. And
Yep.
how is this strain different than the strain? Because you've been to Labrador and Newfoundland and what how is the strain different than those fish?
They're all brook trout. The Lake Superior strain just seems to be the largest growing strain. Exact genetic differences, I can't tell you exactly what they are, but these fish just seem, if given the opportunity, will grow bigger than the Labrador fish.
They'll grow bigger. Okay.
Yeah,
And have they tried stocking the Labrador fish in the Great Lakes, to your knowledge?
that I don't know for sure.
Okay, because 'cause you're saying stocking didn't work. I'm wondering kinda what they tried stocking.
Yeah, they've tried over the years. They tried even Nipigon strain fish down in the U.S. I think it was a combination of keep limits and seasons and everything. And in a lot of cases, the fish just didn't get maybe the time they need to establish themselves
Yeah,
and really get that population going again. And again, there's just a lot more traffic on the U.S. side. There's a lot more just fishing pressure in general. That may have something to do with it. So I think we're hopeful that maybe the stuff that they've enacted, recently is going to help make a difference of them. There's a few caught along the South Shore of Lake Superior in various places, but I think to go out and say I'm going to catch coaster today is a difficult thing to do. Where there's places on the Ontario side, I think you could say, yeah, we're going to go out and catch coasters today, and you're going to do it.
you're gonna get them up there. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more about coasters, their habits and behaviors. So, they're called coasters for a reason. I'm assuming they stick close to the coastline.
Yep.
Do they ever go out in deep water, or are they always inch close?
I've heard of a couple being caught on downrigger setups, guys fishing for lake trout and that, but it's not any significant number. They're very water temperature oriented, and the water gets too warm, they just, they'll still stay along shoreline areas, but just drop off deeper, tight to shoreline areas.
Okay.
So, yeah, but they're rarely encountered out in open water.
What are you looking for? Like, what does the ideal coaster water look like, smell like, temperatures, that kind of thing?
Well, they don't like flat bottom. You want either chopped up bottom areas or big boulders with fairly close access to deeper water, where
Huh.
they can move up and down as they look for food. And if water temperatures get too warm, they can drop off quickly into deeper water. It seems that 60 degrees or so is the upper limit that really pushes them off deeper. And early in the year, we'll catch them sometimes in a foot or two of water. I mean, they'll be
Oh,
right up
cool.
super skinny. Primary forage is smelt, sticklebacks, crayfish, sculpins. If there's bugs around, they will eat them to a certain extent. We do catch them on the surface at times, but it's not a regular occurrence. But they will move up super, super shallow under some situations.
What's a good size coaster? What's an average coaster, good size coaster?
Well, the average, the typical fish we catch is in the 16 to 18-inch range. We get a lot of fish in that 18 to 20-inch class. A number over 20 throughout the course of a trip. The biggest one I've ever seen personally was a 25-incher that one of the guys got in July. And that was, I think, 25 by 16, girth calculated to a little over 8 pounds.
8
So,
pound. Wow, no
yeah,
kidding.
that's a substantial brook trout.
Yeah. How big was the record out of Nipigon years
It
ago?
was, I think, what was it, 14, 15, almost 15 pounds, 14 and a half.
Wow. What's the fight like on a giant coaster?
Well, they're tough fish. They will make really powerful runs, which you don't normally think about brook trout doing. We've had fish jump, which you don't normally think brook trout doing. So they're a little bit supercharged, I think because they're always on the move. They're always swimming, it seems like. So they're strong, powerful fish. And coloration on them varies a lot. Some are almost very silvery, like a steelhead in the or rainbow in the big water situation. Some are colored up more, and of course, later in the year they do tend to color up more than they do early. But yeah, color varies on them. Maybe it has something to do with they're laying under in a sheltered area. They may color up a little bit more rather than one that's maybe out and exposed a little bit more to sunlight and that. But they're just cool fish. I mean, the whole story behind them, the history behind them.
Yeah.
I just think they've been very fascinating to me, and they're actually one of my favorite fish
Yeah.
to go after.
Super cool. So orient us a little bit. So we were talking about this Lake Superior Marine Conservation Area. Where is that? It's up by Nipigon, but where is it exactly?
So that would be, the extreme northwest corner of Lake Superior. It starts down around, well, actually, it covers from the U.S. border just above, Isle Royale, and the whole section down to the Ontario border down, I think, to about the town of Rossport on the north shoreline. And it encompasses this whole archipelago of islands that really, inside the islands is what's called Nipigon Bay. On the outside, is the open waters of Lake Superior. So, yeah, hard to access area, incredibly beautiful. Water on the outside is crystal clear. You can see down 20, 25 feet, and it's pretty much all rock. Although,
Oh, it
the
is.
islands have a lot of evergreens on them, and there are sand and gravel areas around, but it's just super, super rocky, a lot of steep drop offs, huge cliffs on the shorelines going down into the water.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, very picturesque, very, very beautiful.
Do you see much, obviously, if this area is protected, I'm assuming that you're kind of not seeing structures or a whole lot of other people. Is that right?
No, you see, depending on where you go, obviously, that varies a little bit, but there's just so much water there that it's just a difficult. It's easy to drive to, but a lot of it's hard to access. Some of it you can, but again, there's a lot of the river mouse and creek mouse are, you can access. It's crown land and such. But if you travel by boat, you got to be cautious because weather can come up very, very quickly, and it can get dangerous at times. So it's just again, there's definite challenges on, especially getting out to the outer islands areas. It's a pretty hard thing to do on a day trip, and places to actually stay overnight. There's certainly places where you can pull on the shoreline and camp and do things like that. But as far as having accommodations out there to go to, there's not a lot of that out there. So
So what do you do? So how do you get there?
there's a few different ways that we do this. There's when I go into Nipigon, there's a couple places that, again, I'm going to go back and kind of, there's been some changes happen there really just very recently. Have been going to a place called Bowman Island Lodge on the outer side of the island chain. That's where I've been going. Gary Lang, the owner of that lodge, would take people out. He's got a big boat that he takes you out in, and he's got boats out there to you know that you take out from the lodge and come back in on a daily basis. Well, Gary's about 80 years old now,
Okay.
and he's slowing down his operation, and he's not quite sure what he's going to do in the future. He's not advertising for new business there at this point. There's another fella that has a place called Superior North Outfitters that is a little bit more down towards Thunder Bay on that, again, in the conservation area there. And he has kind of does a similar type thing where he does have a lodge that he takes people out to. I have not been to that place personally, so I can't tell you a whole lot about it. There is a couple guides that are based out of Red Rock, which is on Nipigon Bay. And when weather permits, they will go out on Lake Superior from Red Rock and they can do it in a day trip and get into that outer area. You can access it from the town of Rossport and places like that. I don't know the situation of anybody going out there on a daily basis, but other options up there that get you in really the same fish. You've got the Nipigon River, and you can get guides for the Nipigon River. And again, that affinity angling, Neil Leduc that will do Lake Superior, also does Lake Nipigon and the Nipigon River. So that whole corridor is a
Yeah.
lot of protected land. It's Crown land, First Nations, provincial parks, national parks, and it all has that same strain of fish in it. And they've all got the same regulations as far as the protections on the fish. So
Okay.
depending on conditions in that, you may be able to fish the river, you can fish Lake Nipigon, you can get out on Lake Superior.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, so again, it's just a tough area to access. And again, that I'm sure adds to the quality of the fishing.
Right.
So there's definitely a little bit of work involved in it. And anybody interested in that, if you want to get out with one of the guides or something like that, you definitely want to make plans well in advance to do it. Because again, there's not a lot of people doing this. So I would, say definitely, book out in the fall before you want to go if you want to go in the spring and summer of the
6 months
following
out
year.
or so.
Yeah. There are opportunities across that whole north shoreline of the lake to still do a lot of DIY stuff by hitting the different river mouths, both early and then later in the summer, just, keeping in mind the season, the way the seasons are and such like that as far as fishing legally and such.
When's your favorite time to go, Jerry?
And I usually get up there about the middle of May, and I've stayed all the way through into the first week of June and have had good fishing through that whole stretch. And it continues in through June pretty well until the water really hits up into that 60-degree mark or 62 or so, and then those fish will move off and just get harder to locate, harder to pin down, and harder to target. Now, if you get a cool uh, August, they'll move back in shallow again before the season closes. So it's all water temperature focused more than anything else.
So interesting. And do you cover a lot of this in any of your books, Jerry?
When I did my first book on the Great Lakes, the Inland Oceans book, I didn't have a lot of detail on the coaster stuff because I really hadn't done it much at that
Yeah.
point, and all the information I have was, for the most part, what I was able to read about, find from other people. So I now have a big background in that whole type of fishing. So if anybody's interested, they can certainly contact me, and I'm happy to share what I know. In fact,
Okay.
I've got a article coming out in Fly Fisherman, the last issue of the year, which I'm not sure when that's going to drop, that covers this Nipigon corridor and really focuses on detail on that fishing.
Oh, it
So,
does. Okay, fantastic.
yeah, so that'll be out, sometime over the next couple months.
Okay. Tell me about your setup. What I'm assuming you're using sinking lines. What are you doing for coasters setup wise?
Yeah, so there's times you can fish them on a floating line with a long leader, weighted fly, but generally we're using probably a type 3 sinking line most of the time. They'll move a long way to a fly, so keeping it up in the water column a little bit, so you cover a wide area and give the fish chance to see it. seems to be, when I first started it, we fished super fast sinking lines and we caught fish, but especially the last few years, I've had some really, really top-notch fishermen come up with me, like Jeff Courier, for example, has been up a few times. And he kind of brought in some of this stuff he learned from fishing competitions against the Australians and guys out of the UK who are really probably the best stillwater trout fishermen that there are. And he really went more to the slower sinking lines, and even on flat, calm, sunny days, even like a clear intermediate line. And that really, some of the stuff that he showed us has really made a difference over the last 3, 4 years to really help in the numbers of fish that we'll encounter on any given day.
What's a good day for you, numbers wise?
God, I hate to put numbers on that because
I
that's
know. I
always
got to
a
ask you
given
though.
day on, depending on conditions. But I would say that 5 to 6 fish per person on a boat is a good typical day.
Yeah.
And there's days where you catch one, and there's days where you might get 10 or 12, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's
But,
fishing.
a handful of 6 fish a day is good. And they're pretty much, they'll all be, say, they're in the 16 to 20 to 21 inch range. So
That's amazing.
pretty good numbers as far as brook trout go.
Yeah. Tell me about your fly selection. What are you carrying?
A lot of, again, as far as, not too specific on this exact pattern, but a lot of white rabbit stuff, as far as smelty looking things. I tie fly with just a loose deer hair head, white barred rabbit, and I usually put that back on a stinger hook because they love to nip the back end of the fly. So dropping that hook back a little bit definitely makes a difference on your hookup ratio.
Yeah.
So anything with a white rabbit and a little bit of flash in it will definitely catch fish. And again, you want to have some olive in there to cover, sculpins, crayfish, and a few attractor flies too. Neil Leduc, that I fish with a little bit, when he gets out on Superior, he loves bright attractor flies to bring them in, from a long distance. But one thing, they also will follow a fly a lot. And if they follow a couple times and don't hit that fly, we'll do like a backup fly. And there's something a little more natural looking, seems to often get the fish to hit that may not hit the bright fly. And something, one I use a lot is a variation off of a magog smelt, a very, very traditional New England pattern. And that's got a lot of nice fish to really commit and eat after they, didn't hit, uh, a bigger, brighter fly. So
Yeah.
doing that
Okay.
backup like that does seem to work quite well.
So if you got a buddy who's fishing, like your one buddy's fishing a bright fly and you've got a more of a dull one, where you kind of take turns, that fish follows that bright fly in twice, doesn't take it, then you take a shot at him with your dull fly?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
So it's a good idea to fish in tandem like that. Maybe one guy trying something a little different than the other.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, they're still brook trout, so they're pretty aggressive, but they're also cautious and in their own way, I guess I would put it. But having a backup or a finish fly, kind of like we do in steelhead fishing too, is a great strategy for these. And I've seen it work in the river, in the Nipigon River. This was last year. We were fishing the river with Neil Leduc, and I had cast out, and I was fishing like an orange rabbit strip thing, which is a fly Neil likes for the river, and felt this nip at the back of the fly, and then I got in closer and saw the fish, and it was a big fish, and the fellow that was with me in the boat, he literally just, and he had a little kind of like creepy crawly, just very natural colored, generic nymph kind of thing. Fair,
Yeah.
and he flipped that in, and that big fish swam right over and ate it right next to the boat.
Ate a nymph.
Yep. Yeah, and it wasn't really a traditional nymph, but it was maybe something that was more crayfishy, I would say, but very natural colored. That fish just ate it right next to the boat, and that fish was a little over 7 pounds. So
Wow.
Yeah, once they get focused on something and that they're not particularly boat cautious either. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
How about leaders? Like leader shy, tippet shy?
nah, 12 pound,
Oh, are you? Okay.
12 pound. Now, the one thing we will do with the sinking line, so which is kind of counterintuitive, and this was something that, Courier kind of drove into my head was the short leader sinking line thing is great when you're in current in a river
Yeah.
because again the fly is hanging below or behind the sink tip
Yep.
or the sinking portion of the line. In a lake, it's a different game because the fish can come from any direction, and he feels that in clear water, especially again if it's fairly calm and sunny, that dark part of the line can bother him at times. So we've extended the leader or tip it out to maybe 6 feet at least from the fly,
Okay.
and maybe even 8 feet or longer, depending on conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing I think that is also helped out to get more fish on the line.
Yeah. Are you using weighted flies then when you do that?
Most of the time, not maybe lightly weighted, but not heavily weighted. I like the movement of an unweighted fly a little bit more.
Yep.
But again, depending on it kind of depends on the situation a little bit too. A lightly weighted fly, I don't think is a bad thing. But again, a lot of these times these fish are up so shallow, especially when the water temperatures are right, that a weighted fly, can get you too deep too fast or get you in snags.
Yeah.
And I think that, a neutral buoyancy fly really, you can just fish it more effectively, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Good rundown.
The only difference to that would be if we're going to go after lake trout, then we're using a weighted fly along with the sinking line just to get it down deeper quicker than with just the line itself.
Yeah. I was thinking rabbit fur, that stuff sinks, but a deer hair head that's gonna not sink is
Yeah,
readily. Yeah. Would you be willing to send me some pictures of some of those flies we talked about?
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that'd be great. All right, we'll put those out there on Instagram and Facebook. So Jerry, I want to shift gears a little bit, talk about you a little bit. So you've made a living in the fly fishing business. How have you done that? What's your path been like?
Well, I ended up being able to get a job as a sales rep in the business. I worked at, the shops in the Cleveland area when I was in high school and stuff and through college and that. And, I worked in the environmental business when I first got out of school. Yeah, it was okay. Wasn't real happy. I was still doing the guiding and working at a shop on the side. And I ended up going out to the Fly Tackle Dealer Show, the original dealer show, a number of times and was able to secure a rep position here in the Midwest with a group of companies.
Oh,
And I did that along with seasonal guiding. And uh, gosh, for a little over 30 years, I sold that business a few years ago. And as you know, I do kind of a lot of instruction in this Cleveland area. I
sure.
did a lot of writing through the course of all that, a lot of magazine stuff. Been able to, get a couple books published.
Yeah.
And what I've added into the mix now that I'm kind of out of the rep business full time is, hosting trips several times a year to various destinations like Alaska, Cuba, Mexico, and again, this Lake Superior trip.
Oh, no
So,
kidding.
yeah, so I've got a lifetime of fly fishing background. I started when I was 10 years old and I just turned 70. So,
Oh, there you go. It's a
yeah,
few
I've been
years.
doing it a long time, had a chance to get to a lot of different places. But, just being in the business as a sales rep for 30 years, that's kind of what kept the whole thing going and opened up, a lot of different opportunities and connections to be able to do
Yeah,
what
I'll
I've
say.
been able to do.
Who had the biggest influence on you growing up in terms of fly fishing?
Ooh, boy, that's a tough one. You know what really got me started initially was watching the original American Sportsman TV show. And when the fly fishing episodes would come on, they really fascinated me. And there was a small shop in the Cleveland area called Angler's Mail. It was one of the first mail order shops actually in the US also. And this goes back into the, oh my gosh, late 60s into that time frame.
Oh, really?
And those guys, had a lot of influence as far as, getting me going and getting me introduced to trout fishing. My trout fishing experience was in north central Pennsylvania. Locally, I did warm water stuff, a lot of farm pound fishing for bluegills, largemouth, river
Yeah.
stuff, smallmouth. And that was really kind of how I got rolling. And when the migratory rainbow thing here started, we call them steelhead. Not everybody agrees with that, but
Yeah.
I was able to get involved in that and learned a lot of that from a fellow by the name of Jeff Liskate, who I think I've mentioned to you
Yep. Yep.
previously as a great guy. And I was able to incorporate my the fly fishing knowledge into that, and I really became. I think I was the first fly fishing only guy on the Ohio tributaries,
Yeah.
back then. There were other guys that had been doing stuff on fly and in Pennsylvania and New York and that, but I think I was the first guy
You might have been the first guy.
on the Ohio trips because initially everybody thought you had to catch them on bait, and that's how everybody fished. That's how I caught my first steelhead
On bait. Wow.
on bait. But then it was like, they hit flies other places, and that maybe we should try fishing flies for them. And
And there you go.
as it turned out, yeah, flies work really good.
Yeah. Jerry, were you back in the 60s? Were you a hippie back in the 60s, Jerry?
I had a little longer hair, had a beard and stuff, yeah. So I was kind of doing the trout bum thing a little bit. Did some road trips here and there, and yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so I was there, yeah, to a certain extent, and then through that I ran into, met guys like Bruce Richards, probably one of the most knowledgeable guys in fly line development, when he was at Scientific Anglers. And I am a total fly line geek because of Bruce. I love to play with fly lines and see all the new stuff. In fact, what really has helped things expand in the Great Lakes and increase opportunities just in big water in general, no matter where you are, is just the advancements in fly lines that we have now,
Huh.
especially in sinking lines.
Yeah, how so? Say more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the first stuff I started out with when I was fishing Lake Erie with flies was Cortland LC13 lead core with, making shooty heads out of it with amnesia running line backing it up. And it certainly got flies down, but it was awful to cast. And then some of the first good sinking lines I got a hold of were airflow lines out of the UK. And those made a huge difference as far as getting in the deeper water and getting into smallmouth bass in Lake Erie and freshwater drum and the walleye and that. And then, I think the American companies, kind of had to catch up and really pay attention to this still water fishery out west and in, Western Canada because that was becoming a big thing. And those lines, we found applications for 'em in the Great Lakes and, Kelly Gallup and Bob Linsman and the streamer thing, with the integrated shooting head, sinking lines for streamer fishing, all that stuff came into the mix. And now, looking at what we have today, we've got the, multi-density sinking lines, which give great feel to a fly at depth and allow you to really to probe and take flies in the depth, into the 30-foot range. The deepest I've caught a fish on a fly in Lake Erie is 35 or 36 feet. Is it the most effective way to fish that deep? No, but again, if you can catch fish that deep on a fly if you want to do it.
Yeah.
And we've caught lake trout now in that 30 to 40-foot depth range with
On
these
fly lines.
with
Yeah.
these fly lines. So, and that's become actually a fairly consistent fishery is the lake trout thing. If they get into that range, and again, it's a seasonal water temperature type thing. If they get into that range, they're very catchable.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting the fly to them.
Jerry, what's surprised you most about your fly fishing journey?
Ooh, the places I've been able to go. Boy, I've been to South America. I've caught bonefish in Hawaii. I've been to Alaska. Yeah, I mean, whoever thought I was going to go to Cuba
Yeah.
and fly fish? So just the interesting places I've been able to go, the interesting people I've been able to meet. And, in some cases, you want the fishing to be good, but it doesn't always have to be good to have a great time. A lot of
Yeah.
the people you get to interact with and that is all part of the equation when you do things. So
Yeah, I agree.
I think the biggest thing is just the variety of fishing I've been able to do in so many different places and just the number of different species of fish I've been able to catch on a fly.
Jerry, do you think you've mastered the art of fly fishing or come close?
No. learn
Not
learn
even.
something learn some no, master it. Nobody will ever master it. Is there stuff to learn? There's stuff to learn. I learn stuff every year. Just the last couple of years, that stuff that like Jeff Courier has showed us, how to actually fish more effectively with the equipment that we're using under, different conditions.
Yeah.
So that's all, it's all, I don't think you can ever say I've learned it all. And that's what's great about this sport is because you never will learn it all.
Keeps it interesting, doesn't it?
Yep. Yep, for
Joe
sure.
Humphreys told me it's a thinking man's game.
Yeah.
I like that. Do you get back to Pennsylvania and fish at all?
I have not in a while, although I shouldn't say that. I get over to like Presque Isle and that a couple times a year because that's a fun fishery reasonably close by. One of my favorite places that is really good is the Niagara River, especially the lower river below the falls. Again, as a seasonal fishery, it's great. And small boat and even some shoreline access. I mean, you can go there in the fall and catch lake trout off the shore in the Niagara. Yeah, I mean, you can literally drive right to it and walk a little bit and, catch lake trout, so
Casting on a fly rod.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Huh. What's next for you, Jerry?
Boy, Niagara River stuff coming up once it cools off a little bit. See what happens locally as far as the steelhead stuff. And got a group going back to Cuba the end of January. So
Ah, cool.
yeah, and back to Nipigon in May and early June. So yeah, and hopefully a fair amount of instructional stuff locally here to keep things busy and a couple magazine articles in the works. And I'm hoping to do a kind of revised version of my first book, on the Great Lakes, just to update, what I've learned since that book came out. So,
That's fly fishing the inland oceans.
right, yeah,
Okay. Okay. You've got a couple others here. You've got what? Fly Tier's Guide to Essential Flies for Bass and Panfish
yep,
Digital. Essential Flies for the Great Lakes region with 600 patterns
yep,
and favorite flies for the upper Midwest, top 50 flies, right? That's your newest book?
yep,
How about that? That's great.
yep. So that's what I've got as far as the book stuff at this point in time.
Very good. What's your favorite shore lunch?
I'm not much of a shore lunch guy. I'm a
Oh,
sandwich
come
guy.
on. Are you?
Nah,
Okay. Well, that works.
I'm a sandwich guy. I mean, taking a shore lunch and that you lose fishing time, So, but no,
Okay.
boat fishing. It's tough to do something like that without. And we normally really don't go in and do a full-blown get out and cook type anything or anything like that.
What kind of
So
sandwich what do you bring sandwich wise?
I love big giant sandwiches, man, with a bunch of stuff piled on them. You know, got to
Meat?
have tomatoes and lettuce
Yeah.
and a couple kinds of meat and cheese and so that's my thing is big sandwiches. That's what I like.
Amazing how hungry you can get standing in a boat all morning.
Yep, for sure.
Right? Okay. I'd like the answer in two parts, if I could ask. Your favorite place to eat at the end of the day, one in Cleveland and one up in that Lake Superior region we've been talking about. What do you think?
Okay. Ooh, Cleveland. Cleveland's got a lot of great restaurants, a lot of good ethnic food. Hard to pin that one down on anything. So there's not really a go-to place that, if we're out fishing for the day, that I would say that we generally go to. So
All right.
I got to think on that one. But up in Nipigon, if we do a shore-based trip, there's a place called Ducky's in Nipigon, which has great food and a lot of it. And they just got a beer license this year too, so it made it even better. So you can get in there, have a great meal, have a couple cold beers after a day out. So that's probably shore based in that Nipigon region. That would be my favorite place there.
There you go. Sounds good. Jerry, thanks for being on the show.
Well, Steve, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share some of this with you and your viewing audience.
You bet. You bet. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, the easiest play would be just go to my website, jerrydarkus.com, and you can drop questions in there, or you can reach me at jd@jerrydarkus.com also.
Okay.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Pretty easy to track me down if anybody wants to.
Sounds good, Jerry. I wish you extraordinary success in all your ventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening. And we will be sure to post this info on the Destination Angler show notes. And we'll put up some of those pictures of some of those flies Jerry's was talking about, and maybe some pictures of the area on Facebook and Instagram. You can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaig@destinationanglerpodcast.com. Hey, if you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by Brothers Fountain. I hope you enjoy the show. We'll see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.